Welcome, everybody. My name is Jana, for those who don't know me, and I'm sure most of you know Rossella. And as Rossi's already said, we've sort of decided, well, it was Rossi's idea actually, to put together this event, which I jumped at because I love the books, and I especially love any books to do with Alexander technique. So I thought this was a great place to start. And today we're going to start with Rossella and Anne's book on the For the Love of Games, which some of you may know, may have. We see it on the screen there. And it's a fantastic game. It's a fantastic book, which the girls will tell you more about. And it was quite a fantastic game to put it all together as well, actually. And I know Rossi and Anne from Melbourne. And I know Rossi and Anne knows Rossi and Anne from Melbourne. And they're friends who decided one day they trained together in Melbourne, and they decided to write a book together, putting all the games and experiences from different classes all in under one roof or in one cover. And Rossella is Italian. She lives in Italy. Well, she lives in Canterbury, but now she's in Italy. And she teaches in Canterbury Alexander technique, and now she does, I believe, a lot of online workshops and events and things. And she's great fun, as you all know, and she's very out there. And also Rossi's one of the organizers for the Congress next year or the year after, whenever it was moved to. And Anne is another very lovely lady, person, girl from Melbourne. I was lucky enough to meet and be taught by when I was training. And Anne lives goes between Melbourne and Hepburn in Victoria, which is a gorgeous spa area. About an hour away from Melbourne, is it, Anne? Something like that. 2 hours.
More like 2,
2 hours.
yeah.
2 hours, yeah. Long time since I've been. And yeah, Anne's got her own private teaching practice as well, teaching Alexander technique and using a lot of the games, of course. And she's a wonderful person, wonderful teacher. And I would like to pass on to the girls now to tell you about their books. So thank you all for coming one more time. Hope you'll enjoy the sessions. Also, one more thing, just quickly, we're recording. So hopefully you all okay with us recording it. And now over to Rossi and Anne. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jana, for that lovely introduction. And so much thanks to you and Rossi for putting together this series, because I think it's a really fantastic idea. And I am really looking forward to hearing from the other authors. And I think it's a very interesting thought that you've had to do this, and to do the whole thing in a month, just fantastic. And it's really a little bit scary, but also really nice to be the first people talking about our book. So I'm just going to start by just setting the scene for you in terms of how Rossi and I decided to write the book, because it's quite a nice little story. And what happened was, we both were training at David Moore's school in Melbourne, and every year there was a residential part of the course where the whole group of students, and sometimes other students from a school in Sydney, would go up to a beautiful little country place near Melbourne and stay for a few nights and have sort of intensive Alexander, eat together, get to know each other, and also have a lot of fun as well. And at one of those residential sessions, Rossi ran a workshop for the students there. And her workshop was a series of games, because Rossi loves games. I mean, I love games and Rossi loves games. This is probably why we wrote the book. But Rossi ran a workshop that was literally a series of fabulous games, one after the other, after the other, after the other. And at the end of the workshop, and it was really fun for everybody, at the end of the workshop, she was surrounded by the participants, everybody saying, oh, we really want your list of games. Can you please give us the list of games? Because we'll forget them. We played them all quite quickly and we'll forget them, and we want to remember them. So I said, maybe we should put it in the form of a little booklet, because I'd seen Rossi's list, And the games were great, but the list was quite messy. It was just like a scrawled list of games. I thought, maybe we can present it in a really nice little way, and then they can have this and use it in their teaching. Sorry, Rossi, I don't mean it was no worse than any scroll I've done, but I just could imagine it looking really nicer. And so anyway, people thought that would be a great idea. So we got them to write down their email addresses, thinking that, you know, this 20 or so people would be the ones who would get this little booklet of games with a couple of lines about each game. But once we started to work on it, we realized a whole lot of things. We realized that we had heaps of games. We realized that there was a possibility to turn it into something that could be helpful to teachers who weren't at this little workshop, because of course that was only a few students and some, you know, people learning to teach, and that perhaps it would be useful to Alexander world in general. And since I think both of us are not only love the technique for ourselves, but we love the whole idea of the Alexander teaching and sharing it with the world, and particularly also supporting other teachers, we thought it might be a supportive thing to do for other Alexander teachers. And possibly if we'd known how much work was involved in even putting together a little handbook like this, we might have thought twice, but I don't think we would have, because most of the time it was really fun to do it. There were a few challenges along the way, but Rossi and I were and are really good friends. We worked with Jana, who's just wonderful to work with, and so many times when things were, you know, difficult in terms of the actual production of the book, Jana is just such a lovely, calm, cheerful person to be around, and a group of other people helped us as well. So possibly differently from writing a book all on your own, there was no moment for me when I was stuck in a room by myself with a blank sheet of paper going, oh no, I've got to churn out some words. It was very collaborative. The people that we were working with were really lovely. And the process it had its challenges, but it was generally good and fun. And the only other thing I'll say quickly before I hand over to Rossi is that I think I've always loved games. So just don't want to say too much about myself, but playing cards got me through university. Playing Dungeons and Dragons got me through post-university. All games for me are all learning I've done at Alexander, workshops and residential courses that's involved a little bit of not necessarily a competitive game, but an exploratory game even has been really enhanced my learning enormously. So from games where you might think about how you're thinking the directions to yourself, and you think them in an angry way, and then you think them in a really kind way. This is what I will still call a game. It's not, there's no winner for this game, but it's like a little exploration for yourself. Similarly, observation type of games where you're encouraged to walk around the room and observe certain things, for me, are always really, really fantastic. And I was thinking about it before tonight, and I think before this morning for you, I think one of the things is I'm a bit of an end gainer, probably most of us are, and the game takes me out of that. I don't feel like I have to get it right. I feel like I can just explore at my own pace, and for me that's just a relief. I feel all that effort to not, you know, disappoint the teacher, blah, blah, drops away, and I can just enjoy myself. So that's enough from me. I think Rossi has some things she would like to share, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Anne. So you meet someone who had a lesson with you on a workshop 10 years ago, and you ask them, what do you remember from that time? And you remember that workshop was good. You had a very good way to explain things. You felt good about the way you had the order of the things you were gonna explain and talk about. And there were good questions at the end. So you really got your audience. And they go, oh, I never forget that thing that you do, cross your arm and cross them the other way. So try that one for a second. You have done it before, I'm sure. Cross your arms. That's how you normally cross your arms. And then cross them the other way. I've been doing this for 12 years now, and it still feels weird. So that's about habits. And I go on talking about this experience to people, and I've got more classes and private lessons out of this little trick. them from my website, probably. I talk with people, I show those little things. And what they really get is a physical experience. And that's one thing. The other thing is we work hard to learn something. Each person has got his own style of learning. The human brain is so interesting and complicated. But I know that if you're having fun, you learn better. And that's nearly for everyone. If you're having a little laugh for a joke, or you feel comfortable in the environment you are. But also if you get an experience that is a physical and mental, all of it together, and you work out the answer by yourself, then you own it. You never forget it. That's why I find games and activities so effective, because I know that I can talk a lot and people will hear something and then it's gone. But the physical experience or the observation or the thing that they worked out by themselves, it's gonna last. So the biggest challenge with this book for us was to resist the temptation to tell people what to do with it. So each game has been written down is the most simple way, and then has been tested on my husband, who's an academic and not very, is very precise, very, each word has got a meaning, you can just throw them away as if they were for free. And he didn't know the activities in the game. So if they weren't explained very clearly, he wouldn't understand them. And then we had lots of friends really proof testing the book. But that was the hardest thing, to not tell people, this is very good to do this is very good, you could use this in a group. So each of the activities can be used for lots of different things. And now we have got voice teacher buying the books. They are not Alexander Technique teachers, but they use them. And I've got a friend who's a school teacher who's using the book to keep the kids entertained. And I'm very popular for weddings because I always have got something to organize. Do you know that game, Stop and Walk? Have you got space around you in which you can do that game? So if you stand up for a second and go for a little walk around the room. And I find that the fun thing about that game is watching the others. So you won't find it as fun playing it by yourself, but when I say stop, walk, and when I say walk, stop. So have a little walk around and stop. When I say stop, you have to walk. And now walk and stop and walk and stop. Stop and walk. So you can come back to your seat. There is a version that my sister's kids play, and it's got walk and stop, left and right, up and down, jump and touch your nose, and another 4 or 5 couples of things. I can't play it. It makes me just spin on my spin, just get crazy. But they've been playing the game for probably a couple of years, and watching them is like a coordination game played by masters. They are like 6, 8, and 11, and it's just beautiful to watch them trying to trick each other. So you take this game and you bring it into a class of strangers. And when you make a mistake, what's your reaction? For most people, the reaction is a little giggle. They go, you can work with that. You can work with what happened to their necks. You can work with how they react to being wrong. But also you can work with the ones that are perfect and never make mistakes. What are you doing to make sure you're not making? So that was the temptation for us in the book, to go into this explanation of what to do with the game. And we thought, well, people know their stuff and we can keep it very simple. So there is the explanation of the game, a list of topics and these could be used for, and a few questions. And all was so hard to stay just in that little space. We really wanted to put more and more and more, but we got used to it. And at the end, what makes it that you can pick up the book, look at a game in, 1 minute and a half, and come out from it and just keep on with your group. So that was the idea, to make something that you could use. And that was one thing. The other thing I wanted to say is that I'm really pleased with the object. If you touch it, it's a little bit soft and is a little, you can see it from the moon. And that's because we have got the artist Isobel Noel that is just incredibly gifted. But also we had an amazing team of people helping us. So I guess my suggestion, why we wrote the book, was because we wanted it. And I'm the one who uses it, to be honest. I still use it constantly. And we wrote it with in mind other colleagues, and we're very happy it's gone out there. And you know, I always get very excited when people say, "Oh, I've got it at the school, we play with it." So I guess the point was to create something that was useful and beautiful, and I'm happy we did. Lots of thanks for lots of people. I would like to play another little game, and the reason I want to play it is that you remember that after. So the theory is say something, say that you say what you're gonna say it, and say that you said it. And I would like you again to stand up for a second. We are gonna do, oh, the other thing I wanted to say is that, of course, lots of those games we made them from amazing teachers. So we asked for their permission to publish the games. And this one is from a lovely teacher, Wolfgang Weiser, that you may have met around. He does the tightrope. We are gonna put the hands up to the ceiling, or bring your hands up to the ceiling. And the idea to bring your hands up to the ceiling is that you're gonna use 4 moon joints. So as you're standing up there, notice your feet, notice your ankles. Let your lower back soften, your tailbone pointing down, and then notice your fingertips there. After a second that you're standing up, you may feel like your fingertips are a little bit like sausages, pointing down. And then you can let the fingertips take you up, up, up to the ceiling. And when you get there, just notice if something happening to your lower back and let that go. Soften the back of your glutes and the back of your calves. And to get there, we had to use 4 joints. So we are gonna let them go one after the other very gently. So you can let your wrist go, and that's number 1. And then you can let your elbows go, and that's number 2. And then you can let your armpit joint go, and that's number 3. And then the last one, your collarbones, and let them go, and 4. So put a hand up if you had 4 joints. Very nice. Lovely. So I use this one in lots of ways. Sometimes I will spend 50 minutes just to get a group of beginners to learn how to bring their arms up without arching their lower back, because lots of people will go in a back bend as soon as the arms start lifting up. And often people map number 3 and number 4 together. So they find very hard to let the arms drop the last bit, the third bit, without dropping at the same time this joint. And I like to just use 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, because with my accent, I'm not gonna try to say anatomical words, very long ones. Okay, Anne, you had
Yes.
that.
Oh, yes, I do. That was great, Rossi. I was just going to give one more example of an activity from the book. A little bit of fun, a little bit of hopefully enjoyable, interesting kind of idea. And this is a game where you can stay sitting, and the only thing you need to do is to find a piece of wall to look at. So not looking at the screen for a moment. Feel free to turn your chair or even to move to a different part of the room. It doesn't matter if I can't see you. And you're just going to look at a piece of wall. And then while you're looking at it, you're just going to let yourself come into an easy, balanced sitting. So your neck is free. Your sit bones are resting on the chair. Your feet are resting on the floor. You're remembering to breathe. And then what I'd like you to do, you're sort of looking at the wall. I'd like you to imagine that a paintbrush is growing out of your nose. You may have come across some similar thing to this, but you've got a paintbrush growing out of your nose, and the paintbrush just happens to be exactly the right length to reach the far wall. So it's a nice soft paintbrush. The end of it's quite soft, so you can paint with it very gently. It's got whatever colour paint on the end you would like to imagine. And what you're going to do is very gently paint a heart shape on the wall in front of you using your paintbrush. It's a lovely soft paintbrush, so you don't have to press hard to get the shape. The heart can be small, it can be large. When you've painted it one way, you can go back and paint the other direction if you'd like to. And you might even paint a line or a circle. Paint a line right down to the floor, as far up as you'd like to go. Just gently letting your paintbrush make marks on the wall. Then, just for fun, you might see if you continue to paint shapes on the wall, but remember that your sit bones are still resting on the chair, and let yourself sit down comfortably on the chair and see if that makes a difference. And you might also, just for another bit of fun, you can add anything you like into this game, but you might add in the thought that you're sitting in a very spacious room with space to the sides of you, space above you, and your sit bones resting down. And then that's it. We can come back together now. Thank you. So I use that activity just to help people really to understand how freely their head can move on top of their spine if they're having trouble getting that idea. And I use it for myself for the same reason. If I'm feeling a little bit sort of stiff in the neck, a little paint on the wall often helps me to free my neck in a sort of more interesting way than just thinking about freeing my neck, which is probably the more common way to do it. So yeah, that's just a little game that I have used lots of times with other people and still find it fun to do myself as well. How are we? Just let me check the time.
Yeah,
okay.
Perfectly on time. And thank you for allowing us to take our eyes off the screen for a minute. That was nice.
Good, good. So is that our time up now, Rossi, and we're going to go on to the next section? Okay, good. That would be great. So over to you.
So thank you very much, both of you, Anne and Rossi. And I would like to now open up for questions and answers. So I'm sure you'll have some questions around how the book got together.
I think you've told us already, but I wondered how to get the book. I think there was an email about it. Was there an email about it, or have I imagined that?
The book, Rossi's book?
Yeah, the book, The Love of Games.
Yes.
Well, you basically send an email with your address and your details to the email address for the book, and you get an invoice. And once the invoice has been paid, you get the book in the mail.
Perfect.
And that was our choice as independent publisher, to keep it very simple and very personal. So I actually emailed with every and each person who owns the book.
I thought I'd had an email. I was just double checking because it sounds like it's a fun book and a good good tool for all us Alexander teachers to have. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
I'd just like to say that I love the book, and I find it so much more accessible when you both explain how to use it. Somehow the written word doesn't quite do it as well as you do. So thank you. That's really useful.
Oh, how lovely. Thank you. Thank you. It is true. Sorry, Rossi.
No, please.
Oh, it is true that it's hard to capture the spirit of the game on the page. I agree, because games are so much fun and the written word is just, much more. But hopefully there's plenty of chances to come along to something where Rossi or I are doing some games, or other people are using the book to play some games, and we can all get together and enjoy playing them together, because they really are, they can just be so much fun.
Yes. And there is a side effect of that. So I've been visiting training courses where they were using the games in a way that was different from the way I had in mind, and it worked perfectly. So there is also a space for elasticity and plasticity in those activities. If you read it in a way that works and it works for you, it's fine. It's perfect, actually. I learned a new version of the game.
Yes, I also find that it evolves. When you start doing a game, then your creativity evolves. So having the starter points is really brilliant, because then you find yourself going your own way, depending on how the reaction comes from the audience you're working with. So yeah, really, really good. Thanks.
Some of these games are traditional. You'll find a version of them in any place you go. There is one in which you point the finger, you say the name of the person, and then you stand up and go to take their chair in a group, in a circle. I've seen it played in very many different ways, but that's often, you know, the root of it is that it's an inhibition game. You point, you say something, you stand up and you go. And I've seen it played from people who would squeal when they were pointed at. They got so excited and it was so weird and difficult, and they were trying to keep an eye on the knee, on the lower back. It was also new, and also the group was new for them. And I've seen it played in a school with a group of people who knew very well each other and were so good at it that there was absolutely nothing to see. Everyone was very composed and neck free and moving really beautifully and really slowly. So they started making noises as they were walking to the other chair. And it's really hard to keep serious and, you know, professional if someone gets up and starts going bada 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 Batman as they get to the next chair. And then of course people picked it up, so everyone was trying to come up with a little funnier song to sing as they were walking from. So sometimes things just flourish out of, you know, any chance, and then you have got good memory. And you don't remember the time you got it wrong, but you remember the feeling of being part of something and learning and understanding. And okay, yes, more questions.
Christina had a question, I believe.
I was just wondering if you could use it without mentioning Alexander, you know, as a way just to sneak something in. I was thinking of young people, for instance, and that you can sneak some habits or some things in without getting into detail with the Alexander technique.
Oh, I think definitely. I mean, some depends. Different games are probably slightly different in that regard, but there's certainly plenty of games where the words free your neck or inhibition or direction are not used in the game. You can add them in if you're you know, using the game and you want to add them in, but there's no word like that in the game. Among them are these traditional games that Rossi has just mentioned, like there's one called Granny's Footsteps, where you're sort of, someone is at the front and they're looking straight ahead and other people are trying to creep up behind them to touch them on the back or take something that's behind them, and they have to keep turning around. And if they see someone moving, that person has to go back. That's a really traditional game. I mean, I call that What's the Time, Mr. Wolf? That's how I learned it. But these sort of games are in the book because for Alexander people, they can teach you things about where you're tensing in certain situations, but you can easily play them. And one of the activities that I've used a lot is a game where really you just ask people to walk and imagine that they're short and tense and contracted, and then imagine they're really tall and wide and they can move really easily, and a whole lot of other thoughts, and just see what difference that makes to their walking. But it has Alexander principles underlying it in a way, but they're not necessarily spelled out. So you could easily use it for school kids, for example, or for different groups, I think. And as Rossi said, that's how I would use it, would be for people who were not necessarily Alexander people, but we also understand that you might want to use it quite differently, and that would be great. You know, you might want to use it with quite different people. Does that answer the question enough for you?
Yes, but well, halfway, I'd say, because the thing is, I would like these kids to learn some of the principles, but without them knowing, if you know what I mean. Yeah.
Well,
So
that's
sorry. I'm gonna jump in. There is a game, there is an activity that is so simple in which you actually pick up something out of a bag or a backpack. So you bring a backpack or a bag, you put it in the middle of the room, and each person has to go and pick it up, and the others are watching. And they have to say what you do to pick up the object. They have to say everything that moves. And what happens, I played this one with kids, that's why it jumps up in my mind now. What usually happens after 2 or 3 is that they start noticing that the head goes back and the neck squeezes. And then they start noticing when some people put their knees together. So they start noticing what happens and how you bend. And because they are young people, they may feel a bit self-aware that people are watching, but knowing that everyone has to do it in a certain way, by the time you get to the last one, they do it perfectly because they cannot not correct. So they will be noticing things, particularly if you have done a bit of anatomy before, if you have given them a little bit of ideas of what to watch. So I don't know if that works with very little children. With very little children, I've worked with 2, yeah, yes, Eileen.
Yeah, I actually was invited to my grandson's kindergarten last year too, because they were learning about anatomy, and they asked for parents who were doctors or, you know, knew something about anatomy to come in and give a talk. And my daughter offered me to come. So I went. There were all these, I think they were 4-year-olds at the time. Wow. Yeah. So they were 4-year-olds, and I had about 18 of them, and I had half an hour to work with them. So I taught them about bending at the hips, and I did this game with them, the joints, the 4 joints, and they loved it. I did active rest as well. And, you know, it was just those 3 things I did. The next time I went to pick up my grandson from the school, the teacher said to me, she said, I have to tell you, Helene, that one of the other parents came to see me and said, what was that that my kid did? Because he'd gone home and taught his mother to do the 4 joints, right? And taught her to bend from the hips. This is a 4-year-old. So that was, yeah, that was really fun. It was good.
Yes.
And sorry. I also had I have a friend who is a teacher, and somehow she got her husband. It was a funny story. Her husband attended David's workshop in Prague, where Rossi was as well, and then he got in touch with me asking for the book, because he thought it would be perfect for his wife to bring to the first. I think she said the first grade, like the first, second, and third grade, with like young kids at the school. And she so I got her the book, and she really loved it. And the other day she told me she's been using it quite a lot, with no mention of Alexander. Of course, they're not trying to teach the kids the principles, but at the same time, the results they're getting in terms of how the kids are moving, she said, are quite good. So.
Yeah, they kind of work it out by themselves. And I had this 6-year-old coming in and saying, we have tried lots of the games. I like the boring ones. So the one that Anne just did with us, the one that you paint with your nose, that's a boring one for her. While the ones that you get up and run and push things and move things, one that you lean against each other with the hands touching and you have to walk sideways, those are the good ones. Yeah. She likes the boring ones too. They make her feel calm. This is a 6-year-old saying, it makes me feel calm.
It's fantastic.
So yeah, it's, I think those activities are meant to be an inspiration, and then you do whatever you want with them. And I love hearing back from, what people did with them, like Elaine just did.
It's just a very simple question. So you self-published, did you?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, because I like the layout you've done with a game per page, and I presume that's how you've set it out throughout the book.
Yeah, so what you really need to have a book that looks good is good friends that are very good at doing it.
Yes.
We were so lucky to have Peter O'Mara, who's not just someone who's got a good eye, but he works with words. So he had an aesthetic view of how the page could look, and he came back to us with a few ideas, and we were just stunned. He could have not looked that good without him. And then we had my husband, Conor Parsley, who is really good with words, just helping, and he's an amazing editor. So we had quite a team putting it all together. Jana did a lot of the editing at the end on the way the pages looked. We had this artist giving us all those little doodles. And, she was meant to do just a little, but then she liked the book and the games, and she spent a little bit of time on that. And then we got much more than we were promised. So that was incredibly lucky for us. And we are printing with a print on demand service, and that is Ingham Spark. That has been quite good to us, I have to say. And they've got facilities in Australia, in Europe, and in America. And to us was important because we were trying to be as environmentally friendly as possible and avoiding to support practice that we don't share. I'm keeping it as simple as possible. But that just means that when you send an email, you're sending it to me and Anne. We see the email, we think, oh, we know this person, lovely that they want the book. Or who's this teacher? So I actually check the website when I get an email with the website. So I had this chance to, see at least, 400-500 different websites. And then I ordered the book one by one and I sent them. And there was a point at my house where I got a little bit annoyed with how slowly they were printing. So I ordered 80 copies and I was mailing them by hands to England. Sorry?
That is a labor of love.
In a certain way it is, but it's surprisingly, when you get into the rhythm, it's surprisingly easy to just, I can do one in 5 minutes and then there is the book ready to go near the door. Whoever, me or my husband, is going out, drops it at the post office. So that kind of worked out well. What really drives me insane is when the book doesn't get there. So as soon as we get an email saying, oh, I've got the book, the book is not here yet, we just email it again. We mail it again immediately. We don't ask questions. So, and then if the first copy gets there, we ask them to donate the book to a school. Some people actually paid for the tube when it got there because they were like, oh, I'll give it to someone else, and paid for it. But if they don't, we are fine. They just, they can donate the book to a school. We just panic when the book doesn't get there. I don't know why I feel so responsible.
Yeah, I think it's much better to do it that way. And the exciting thing for me has been that the book has gone out so far into the world. Like, I thought originally a few copies in Australia maybe and a few copies in UK, but in fact all sorts of countries people have ordered the book. You get order from Iceland, or you get an order from, I don't know, just all these different places that are so exciting. Now I feel like I want to go and visit all the books because I've never been to so many of these countries. I would love to go there. It's really wonderful, isn't it, to feel like your work is going out and being useful in the world in so many places.
As an author, you want to be visible. So in England, I take a few copies of the book to fairies, to festivals and body, soul, mind fairies. And what I do is I offer little taster of the Alexander technique, and I've got the book in front if people want to buy it. And that has brought me interesting people, but it creates the feeling. I've got a bookshop that had me coming in and talking about the book. So it's, it's about how much time and investment you want into the book. But I have to say I had just fun with it, loads of it.
I just wanted to say that it was very interesting for me, the process of putting the book together, because I was mainly dealing with the layout, which is, I have to say, I couldn't make my living like that. That would drive me crazy, because it's just, you do something and then you find and you have to redo it again, and it's, oh my God, it takes forever. But the interesting thing about the content I found with the book was how you, as you mentioned, it's really, really hard to write a book with game instructions which are sort of comprehensible enough, or you can easily to understand, and at the same time they don't sound super boring. You know, it's the same like cookbook. I think, how do you write a recipe that it's not just like a boring, weird thing putting together? And I think Kay or who mentioned, yeah, I think Kay mentioned that it's not always that when Anne and Rossi lead the game, it feels better. I found the same thing. I was like, oh, how do I play this game now? And then I started looking at it as, well, it's really just a skeleton, just a sort of inspiration which I can use and then adapt to whatever I need to, which I found the most valuable thing about the book, that it's not like a cookbook, a recipe you have to follow, but it's more like if you had a recipe, you would have, oh, you check in a bit of this and the good idea is this and this, and then you can sort of slightly improvise, even though you have a setup sort of how to in a way, or given some points which you might, bring out or something like that.
And certainly at first we had a Facebook page as well, didn't we, Rossi? And I think we still do. For the love of game. So, yeah, so the that is aimed at people who've bought the book but who would like to ask questions or understand a bit more about how they might use a game, or chat about the games, or share games that they're doing. And it's just a general site for people who want. So that's always available to people if they like the look of a game but they're a little bit confused. Would something work or not? We're really happy to reply to them and chat about it and all that sort of thing. So that's a bit of another resource. That saved us having to put every detail of how to do every single thing into the book, because had we done that, we might have limited someone's creativity to only what we could think of. And we know that Alexander teachers are incredibly creative. So we didn't want to be limiting people to our ideas only, but to take games and do whatever they could come up with. But on the other hand, we didn't want to leave people stranded. So there is a site to go to if you want to discuss, I'm a new teacher and I don't know how to use this game, but I want to. We're really happy to reply. And you might not like our ideas, but we're happy to talk about games at any time, really.